On Halloween night, beneath the pale glow of a waning moon, three teenage friends, John, Fred, and Greg, set out on a daring adventure. Clad in costumes hastily put together from old clothes and makeup, they wandered the quiet streets of their suburban neighborhood, their laughter mingling with the crisp autumn air. Yet, as they approached the end of Willow Street, where the abandoned house stood like a sentinel of darkness, their mood shifted from joviality to anticipation tinged with fear. The house loomed ahead, its weather-beaten facade half hidden behind gnarled vines that seemed to writhe in the faint breeze. Windows stared blankly, some shattered, others boarded up, each one a silent witness to the passage of time and the rumors that whispered among the local children. "I heard Mrs. Thompson's grandson went in there once," Greg whispered, his voice barely audible above the rustling leaves. "He said he saw things that weren't right." John, always the leader, chuckled nervously. "Ah, come on, Greg. You don't really believe those stories, do you?" Fred, ever the skeptic, shrugged nonchalantly. "Only one way to find out. Let's see what's inside." Despite Greg's unease, the allure of adventure won out, and they approached the rusted gate with a mixture of apprehension and excitement. The hinges groaned in protest as they pushed it open, stepping cautiously onto the overgrown path that led to the front door. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the faint scent of decay. Moonlight filtered through grimy windows, casting eerie shadows that danced across the cracked floorboards. The interior was a maze of forgotten rooms and twisted corridors, each one seemingly darker and more foreboding than the last. They moved cautiously, flashlights casting feeble beams that did little to dispel the growing sense of unease. Greg kept close to John, his eyes darting nervously from corner to corner, while Fred maintained an air of skepticism tinged with curiosity. As they ventured deeper, the house seemed to come alive around them. Shadows flickered and shifted, as if hiding unseen secrets just beyond the edge of perception. A chill settled over them, not just from the cold air, but from the palpable sense of a presence watching, waiting. The first sign of something truly unsettling came in a room cluttered with dusty furniture draped in tattered sheets. Fred spotted it first, a faint, almost imperceptible movement in the corner of his eye. He turned sharply, his flashlight beam wavering as he scanned the shadows. "Did you guys see that?" Fred whispered, his voice tight with apprehension. John and Greg exchanged wary glances, their nerves on edge. "See what?" John replied, trying to sound calm despite the tremor in his voice. But before they could answer, a low, mournful wail echoed through the hallway, sending shivers down their spines. It was a sound devoid of humanity, a sound that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves. Greg's breath caught in his throat. We should go back," he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. But retreat was no longer an option. The house seemed to mock their fear, its corridors shifting and twisting in on themselves like a malevolent puzzle. Doors appeared where none had been before, leading to empty rooms or vanishing altogether into blank walls. They pressed on, their nerves fraying with each passing moment. Whispered voices seemed to follow them, echoing in their ears with words that were almost comprehensible, yet chilling in their tone. "Leave, get out, too late." Then came the figures, shadows that flitted through the darkness just beyond the reach of their flashlights. John caught glimpses of faces, twisted and contorted with agony, before they dissolved into nothingness. Fred swore he felt cold fingers brush against his neck, sending a shock of icy dread down his spine. In a room cluttered with broken furniture and peeling wallpaper, they encountered the full force of the house's malevolence. The air grew thick and oppressive, as if charged with electricity. Shadows coalesced into indistinct forms that hovered menacingly in the corners, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. Greg screamed as a spectral figure materialized before them. A young girl in a tattered dress, her face a mask of sorrow and rage. Her eyes bore into their souls, and a piercing scream tore through the air, shaking the very foundations of their courage. "We have to get out of here," Fred shouted, his voice breaking with fear. But escape was elusive. The house seemed determined to keep them ensnared within its ever-shifting corridors. They ran, their hearts pounding in terror, only to find themselves back where they started, as if trapped in a nightmarish loop. Hours, or was it days, passed in a blur of horror and confusion. They stumbled through the labyrinthine house, pursued by unseen forces that whispered their deepest fears and darkest secrets. Time lost all meaning, stretching and contracting like a taut elastic band that threatened to snap at any moment. Finally, just as hope seemed lost, they burst through a doorway into blinding daylight. Gasping for breath, they collapsed on the sidewalk outside, their costumes in tatters and their faces etched with exhaustion and disbelief. Relief washed over them like a tidal wave, mingled with the lingering terror of what they had experienced. Neighbors gathered around them, their faces etched with concern and confusion. "What happened? Where have you been?" they asked, voices filled with worry. John, Fred, and Greg exchanged bewildered glances, struggling to comprehend the impossible truth. We were in the house," John managed to stammer. "For maybe 45 minutes, tops." The adults exchanged grim looks. "Boys," one of them said gently, "you've been missing for 3 years." Silence descended like a heavy curtain as the teens tried to process the incomprehensible. 3 years lost in a timeless nightmare, while to them, mere minutes had passed. In the years that followed, they would try to make sense of their fragmented memories. The ghostly encounters, the shifting corridors, and the relentless feeling of being hunted. Each carried scars both seen and unseen, reminders of a terror that defied explanation. The abandoned house on Willow Street remained a dark legend in their hometown, a place shunned by all who sensed the lingering malevolence within its crumbling walls. And though they had escaped physically, a part of them would forever remain trapped in the haunted maze of that fateful Halloween night.